Hello, welcome back, and I am Jeff Jones, and I'm going to talk about my deck I got third with this weekend at YCS Orlando. As you can see, it is a Malice deck. So I'm just going to start out with kind of prefacing and stating that I definitely acknowledge that if you want to win a YCS, you probably should be taking some sort of Rizal variant. I, however, just don't like the Rizal cards, and I really like the Malice cards. I'm a big Alice in Wonderland fan, so I'm just going to take the decks I like I have in the past, and play them to the best of my ability. Uh, so that being said, going into this format and this event, I approach things with a slightly different mindset than most. And my ultimate goal is to try and win game one as much as possible. And this is because that you would mean it means that I get to go first game three. This is incredibly important for Malice due to the threat of Artifact Lancia, but it's incredibly important for basically still every deck. Going first game three is more important than it's ever been. But yeah, super important for Lancia or for Malice because when you go first, at least you have the ability to try and mitigate Lancia with side deck options. But if you go second in game three and get hit with Lancia, your chances of winning drop significantly, if not almost to zero most of the time. Uh, I think that out of all the decks in the format, Malice has the strongest game one performance compared to all the other decks. I think that they play through a lot of the hand traps very well. The common ones, Ash, Imperm, Valor. If you are good with the deck, even Nibiru as well. This weekend, I think I won every single time. I know I won every single time I got Nibiru, except for one time where I was playing through a field at like 3 interruptions, and then Nibiru on top of it. That's most decks, though. Um, and because of this, where I think Malice is the strongest game one, which means I can probably win game one more often than not, I also included cards like Dimensional Shifter and Fua because they help achieve exactly what I want for my opponent's turn one, which is either forcing them to pass their turn entirely or leaving them with a really weak board that Malice can easily break through. So going into this event, I expected the most popular decks to be Rizal Fiendsmith and Rizal Mitsurugi. This led me to also include Dominus Impulse, performs really well against those decks, but also is really fantastic in the mirror match, the Malice Mirror. Like many other people this weekend, I also opted to use Middletronus, which is obviously very strong against cards like Detonator, which I have here, but also, again, also, this goes back to trying to force my opponent into a weaker board with these type of cards, and then Middletronus just deals with the Detonator, and you know they lose. But Middletronus also very good in the mirror match, which is what it's kind of designed for, it seems. Uh, normally cards like Valor, Imperm, etc. are really bad, but being able to use Metaltronus on a name and banish it face down, which prevents it from coming back, super strong in the mirror. I think it's really hard to come back if you hit one of their names. Like if they normal summon Dormouth Sunny's effect and your Metaltronus resolves, I think it's a good chance you just win the game right there. Um, for my side deck, I chose to use the Thrust package and extra traps like Solemn Strike. Excuse me, instead of things like Crossout Designator. The main reason for this is that my choice of hand traps excluded things like Valor, Imperm, and Nibiru. So siding Crossout literally wouldn't have been optimal because I wouldn't even have the necessary targets to hit those cards on top of things like Lancia. Um, that's something else I should probably talk about is that I didn't use cards like Imperm, Valor, Nibiru. Um, I just really have not been a fan of Nibiru for a while. I'm probably wrong because everyone else loves that card and plays three of it, but uh, especially Imperm. That was like the hardest thing for me to cut out of this deck, because Imperm is just such a solid card. It's good. It's decent in your hands going first. It's good for drawing as like a 6 card. Um, Also pairing it with Dominus Impulse, again, very strong. Imperm, then Dominus Impulse to destroy something. It real. I tried so hard to keep it in, uh, but at the end it was the last thing I cut. It was either that or like Ash Blossom, but I decided to still go with Ash Blossom because it's just obviously it's a solid hand trap, but you know, like I said, going uh, first after side decks, things get really hard, not only because of Lancia, but Fuwa and now Meow. So I wanted ways to combat all those cards, and having Ash in my deck let me, you know, try to play through those cards as much as possible. Um, again, like instead of focusing on Crossout Designator, I focused on the cards that would disrupt my opponent's turn, like Dimensional Barrier and Sanctum, along with the Solemn Strike. Uh, Again, it goes back to that goal of force my opponents into situations where they had to pass their turn after using a Lancia or like a Fuwa or a Meow. And if those cards didn't resolve against me, Solemn Strike would just serve as an additional disruption to close out the game. If you end with like a middling Maliss board and Solemn Strike, I feel very confident that I'm going to win that game. Most people, I also adjusted my extra deck to include a Bow and Griffin lines. There's a lot of discussion on social media about Griffin and, you know, talk of Maliss as a non-interactive combo deck. But something I realized that I started to realize in the week or two leading up to this event, and this event confirmed it for me. And that is throughout the entire tournament, including, you know, top 4 and my fourth place playoff. I summoned a Bound Griffin a total of 2 times the entire weekend. Every single match I won was thanks to like a steady Malice strategy using just Cryptor and Binder control. In fact, basically after this event, I'm seriously considering a version of Malice that just doesn't use like a Bow or Griffin at all, and try to take the deck in a different direction. But we'll see how viable that is, especially within the future. You know, we have Alliance Insight, and it really changes the landscape of the format and how Malice looks. This leads to like another important thing about my main deck, and that's the exclusion of Dotscaper. Because I was focusing on different lines and not focusing on trying to do like 1 card combos, I decided that I needed to cut this card as it isn't needed when you're going through the lines that I am. I focus more on things just trying to, like I said, just Cryptor and Binder, which doesn't require Dot. And the other combos I would focus on would be like 2-card combos, which consist of a Malice Name and a Bestial, which again you don't need Dotscaper for that. I guess like the final reason to not play it is like going second. If I'm forced to use Impulse, I can't even use Dotscaper because it's an Earth. As for the tournament itself, I started out with 2 losses in a row to a lot of bad variance and bad luck. My first loss was to Pure Rizal, which I thought would be a harder matchup for me because I use things like, you know, like a lot of Bestials, Shifter, Impulse, and against Pure Rizal, those cards are not great. Game 1, my opponent just ended on like a Detonator, a Field Spell, 2 back row. My hand was really strong. It had Metaltronus, a Lure, a Name, a Bestial, I think a Field Spell. I was feeling pretty good about it. So I started with a Lure to bait out an Ash Blossom, and immediately my opponent Ash Blossomed it. So I'm like, yes. And so I slammed down Metaltronus to get rid of the Detonator, and my opponent game 1 changed Crossout Designator, calling Metaltronus. I was like, Jesus, are you kidding me? So I immediately lost game 1, and because I lost game 1, I went second game 3, lost game 3. After that, I was in game 3 against, it was just regular Rizal Fiendsmith, and he called by my Shifter and ashed my Fuwa, and the game is essentially over after that. So after those 2 losses in a row, my mindset for the tournament basically completely changed. I was sitting there the entire time just waiting for my 3rd loss so I could just drop from the event and, you know, go back to my room and lay down. But oddly enough, that third loss never really came. I ended up winning something like 13 matches in a row after those initial two losses. And ultimately, I secured third place and got a YCS prize card. As for the breakdown of my matchups, like I said, I had played against Pure Rizel, which I lost against. Three Rizel Fiendsmith, which one of them was a loss also. Tenpai Bestial Fiendsmith. Mitsurugi. Four Maliss decks, two Fiendsmith, and two Bestials. Uh, Again, that was another matchup I was pretty afraid of because I think the Maliss mirror is really volatile. Uh, but I think the fact I am so well versed in the deck and the matchup really helped me win those four matches mostly. Um, so that was that led me feeling pretty good because it was something I was worried about. Moving on to top cuts and top 64, I beat Mermail. In top 32, I beat Pure Rizel. In top 16, I beat Rizel Fiendsmith. In top 8, I beat Rizel Fiendsmith. In top 4, I lost to Mitsurugi, unfortunately. And in my third and fourth place match, I beat Rizel Fiendsmith again. So yeah, lots of Rizel Fiendsmith. So overall, despite a rough start, I'm still pretty happy with how my deck performed. I think Malice still proves itself to be one of the most dominant decks, especially of the event. Uh, I'm looking forward to trying to refine the strategy more. I think it would still be harder going forward, though. I believe as of right now, I think I'm the highest ranked Malice player among the premier events that have happened. So we'll see if at YCS Birmingham someone is able to take it to the next level and win. Other than that, I think that is everything that I wanted to go over. So thank you for listening, and I will see you guys on my next podcast.